Welcome back to Reliable Sources. I'm Brian Stelter. Donald Trump's distrust of U.S. intelligence reports makes me wonder exactly who the president-elect does trust. What are his trusted sources of information? That is a key question, and it's going to continue to be a key question as he moves into the White House. We know Trump watches a lot of cable news, both CNN and Fox News, and he reacts to what he sees using Twitter. This is truly going to be a cable social media presidency, both cable and social media. Here's two examples, both involving Sean Hannity. This is what Trump said on New Year's Eve when he was asked about Russian hacking. Watch.
I know a lot about hacking, and hacking is a very hard thing to prove, so it could be somebody else. And I also know things that other people don't know, and so they cannot be sure of this situation.
Like what do you know that other people don't know?
You'll find out on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay, Tuesday or Wednesday. What was Trump teasing? Well, one theory is that he was teeing up this. Hannity's interview with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Hannity flew to London and taped the interview on Monday. It aired on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Did Russia give you this information or anybody associated with Russia?
Our source is not a state party. So the answer for our interactions is no.
Now, so back on New Year's Eve, Fox had not announced the interview yet. The question is, did Trump know ahead of time that his friend Hannity was going to sit down with Assange? As Fox might say, you decide. Later in the week, there was a much more clear-cut case of Trump relying on Hannity. Check this out. He was reading Hannity's talking points. Here's what Hannity said on TV on Friday night, saying the hacking was the Democrats' own fault.
But the truth is, they can only blame themselves and their gross negligence on cybersecurity for this election hacking.
Later in the hour, you guessed it, Trump tweeted about the DNC's gross negligence. Now, we searched this great new tool, FactBase, and it shows that Trump had never tweeted or even spoken the words gross negligence until Friday night. Joining me now, Glenn Greenwald, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and founder of The Intercept. Glenn, you've been on Fox a couple of times recently talking about this Russian hacking issue. When you're on cable nowadays, do you factor in that the president-elect may be watching? Do you care?
No, I don't care in the slightest.
I think it's a way to communicate directly to the person in power, no?
I mean, I think that it's always been the case that presidents pay attention to what is being discussed in the media, and I suppose to the extent that Trump is actually on Twitter and interacting on Twitter and pays attention to cable news, perhaps it is a more direct way to communicate to the person in power. But I generally look at my role as a journalist to communicate with the population and the citizenry and to care more about what they're thinking than what political leaders are how they're reacting.
Well, whether he's watching or not, let's turn to Trump's tweets, because this is something we've seen all week long. Trump deflecting, downplaying the importance of Russian meddling. And that's where you come in, because you've been outspoken on this, saying that journalists should be very skeptical of the U.S. government claims. Lay out your case for us.
So I think everybody would agree that it's certainly plausible that this is something that Russia might have done. I certainly wouldn't put it past them. It wouldn't shock me if it turns out that they did. This is the sort of thing Russia and the U.S. have done to other countries and to one another for many decades, including over the last 10 years. So nobody would say Russia didn't do it or that it would be shocking if they did. But there's a lesson, a really critical lesson that I thought we had learned back in August 1964 when the U.S. Senate stood up and authorized Lyndon Johnson to escalate the war in Vietnam with 2 dissenting votes based on the intelligence community's claims about what happened in the Gulf of Tonkin that turned out to be totally false. And the same lesson in 2002 when a group of bipartisan senators assured the nation that the intelligence community convinced them that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction and was in an alliance with al-Qaeda. And the same lesson we learned in 2013 when just months before the Snowden reporting, James Clapper, President Obama's top national security official, lied to the faces of the country when he said that he wants to assure everybody that the NSA doesn't collect data on millions of Americans. And that lesson is we don't just blindly and uncritically accept the claims of the intelligence community, especially provocative claims about a foreign adversary, without seeing convincing evidence presented by them that those claims are true. And we absolutely have not seen that in this case.
Do you think there's a related lesson here, which is that as political polarization increases in the U.S. and elsewhere, partisans will take their own sides. They will dismiss conflicting information. We saw it in 2003 with the run-up to the Iraq War. We're seeing it again now, but in a different direction with regards to Russia.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole phenomenon of fake news, which has so many people worried about, at its heart has this idea that we've balkanized ourselves on the internet and on cable news, that we can simply believe whatever is pleasing or flattering to us. And this idea that we ought to be skeptical about the intelligence community is one that just a few years ago was extremely popular. In fact, I would call it conventional wisdom among Democrats and progressives and liberals who really learned the hard lesson, not just from Vietnam, but from Iraq. And now you have a complete role reversal where it's Republicans who are expressing skepticism of the CIA and Democrats who are saying if you don't believe the CIA, it means you're disloyal and unpatriotic and you're siding with a dictator against your own country. And I think it has to do with exactly what you just said, which is that we have this tendency to believe whatever we want to believe and adopt whatever principles are most convenient for it at the moment.
We heard from President Obama about this in an interview airing on ABC this morning. Here's what he told George Stephanopoulos.
I'll be honest with you, George, one of the things that I am concerned about is the degree to which we've seen a lot of commentary lately where there are Republicans or pundits or cable commentators who seem to have more confidence in Vladimir Putin than fellow Americans because those fellow Americans are Democrats. That cannot be.
Glenn, who do you think Obama's talking about?
I'm sure he's talking about Donald Trump and about Fox News, which is true. They've done a complete role reversal. You know, when George Bush was president and Dick Cheney was out there, they were saying people who don't accept what the CIA says are traitors and on the side of Saddam. And now you have Democrats who are saying that. So I think Obama is absolutely correct. You shouldn't reject what the CIA is claiming simply because it helps a Republican to do so. But the other side is also true, which is that you're not obligated through patriotism or decency to simply accept what the CIA says, lest you be accused of siding with a foreign dictator or being unpatriotic. What should determine the discourse is the evidence presented, and is on the key claims that Putin directed this hacking and that he did so to elect Donald Trump. There is no evidence for it, not unpersuasive evidence or inadequate evidence, no evidence, just CIA assertions over and over, and that just simply is not enough.
There are anonymous sources saying it, and you would say those sources are not evidence. They are just making assertions. Glenn, I'm out of time, but thank you very much for being here. Always a pleasure.